Welcome to Her Life Unscripted podcast, inspiring burnt out, stressed out, and stretched thin women to embrace the unscriptedness of life. Hosted by Anna Osborne.
Hello, ladies, and welcome to Her Life Unscripted episode 57. I am your host, Anna Osborne, and I am so excited to be here with you today. I am absolutely loving the series that we are in the middle of doing of this idea of, creating a soft landing and what that means and just looking at it from every single angle. And I'm just excited about your guys' feedback. I'm excited about the questions. I'm excited just about kind of the interaction that's happening with this series because it is one that is really dynamic. A soft landing is something that obviously I went into at the beginning of the series, episode 54, and kind of explained what I meant by that. But it's really important, I think, to be able to look at it from all sides because not only a soft landing is a place that we go, but a soft landing is also a place that we are. And so I have the privilege and the honor of being able to interview Kelly Sheets today. Now, Kelly, I have to tell you guys a little bit about Kelly. In my podcasting journey, I attempted probably about 2015. Yeah, summer of 15. So about 2 years ago, I was like, I'm going to start a podcast. And so I did a couple interviews and they're absolute crap in terms of sound quality and my ability to just kind of roll with it and whatnot. And I had these amazing guests that came on, the two that I recorded, and the sound quality was just horrible. I couldn't put them out into the world because these guests were so amazing and I couldn't stand behind their amazingness and the cruddy quality of the podcast sound and whatnot. And so I just kind of stopped with the podcast journey and decided, I'm going to dive into this later. And I was so kind of embarrassed that I had really dropped the ball. And Kelly was one of the gals that I interviewed, and I reached out to her and she was so loving and so kind and so gracious and was like, you know what, whenever you're ready to do it again, I will be there to support you. And true to her word, she has generously agreed to come on the podcast again now almost 2 years later and record again. And now I've got all my sound quality stuff figured out. I've been podcasting for almost a year now, and I am just so honored to have Kelly on the podcast. Our initial conversation was amazing and dynamic, and I'm so frustrated that you guys will never get to hear it, but I know that Kelly and I are going to have a great conversation today, and I'm just excited for her to share about her expertise, and I'll introduce her real quick before we get started, and then we will dive into her interview. So Kelly Sheets, she helps leaders experiment with who they are being to get the results they want. She works one-on-one with clients and also hosts private retreats throughout California and Oregon, and actually in Bali too. She co-created the Change Malaysia and the Curiosity Experiment cards. Curiosity has been her primary tool for almost 2 decades in leadership, consulting, and coaching, and it's this really effective way for her to get her and her clients stellar results. So Kelly is awesome and has great energy, and I'm super excited to introduce you guys to her and get to hear about the idea of how she interprets a soft landing and how it really connects with how she works with women on being to get the results they want. So without further ado, Kelly Sheets. So I'm so excited to introduce Kelly to the podcast today. I had the pleasure of getting to know her a few years ago. We randomly met online, I think, via LinkedIn or something crazy like that, or a podcasting group. It was the podcast, She Podcast.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yes. And we kind of met and then met a little bit offline. And I'm just excited to have her on the podcast. And I kind of shared before we started recording a little bit how we met and our initial recording, which was so dynamic. And it was such crap in terms of the quality. And it just, after many tears and embarrassment and reaching out to Kelly saying, it's horrible. I can't let your listeners hear this because you're too amazing to have the sound quality. She was so gracious to come on again. And so here we are almost 2 years later recording again. And I'm excited to slow down with you and just kind of get to hear where you're at and introduce you to my audience. So welcome, Kelly.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yay, I'm glad we get to do it again.
I know. And I remember after we finished recording the first one, we're like, oh, that was fun. That was absolutely.
Yes, I love just freestyle talking. It's
yes,
great.
awesome.
A lot comes up. So.
Well, I gave kind of your formal introduction before we started recording, but do you want to share a little bit kind of in your own words about kind of who you are and the work that you do so my audience can kind of get a picture of it through your own words?
Sure. I go by the title of leadership coach and consultant because most of the people I work with, men and women, are leaders in some form. So they're either the leader of their business or they're the leader of, an executive director, executive management. So I work with leaders. Most of them are smart. They have the intelligence, the tools, the knowledge, the expertise. They're so damn good at what they do, but there's something missing. There's that place of what else is there? And I kind of feel stuck. I can't move forward. And that's where our starting place is. Everybody always tells me I'm stuck or there's something else. And it always pertains to work. But in the end, we really end up working on the big picture of life, like all the areas. So it's very foundational stuff we do and really looking at who am I being in the world? What do I want to create? Is that really what I want to create? And how do I be the person that creates that with a lot of ease and fulfillment? And the other interesting thing I've been noticing lately, like I told you this last year has been really fun. I've been noticing how many world changers I work with. Like meaning that they have these big visions and they've been staying small. Like, well, I really want to change the nutrition industry. I really want to change something. And then they've been kind of playing small because they don't quite know how to get unstuck. So that's been like a new realization for me to like look at all my clients. I'm like, oh, what a fascinating pattern.
Yes, absolutely. And one thing that I've noticed in terms of this kind of podcasting journey is, I'm getting connecting with people all over the world, really. But so far, I've just interviewed people within the US. And there's so much that when we're doing our work, right, we don't realize, or we can get overwhelmed by how big it feels, how big of a task it's taking on by doing this world-changing, life-changing work, this soul work, right? And that what I've noticed is that as I meet people and get to know them and they're passionate what they're doing, is it's like almost I have this visual of kind of across the nation of these little lights that are turned on by all these people doing really amazing things. And that like everything's getting brighter as I'm building more of these connections and getting to hear about people's different spin on their soul fulfilling work, that it almost is more inspiring because it's realizing, oh my gosh, this isn't happening in isolation. That's just what it feels like when it's overwhelming. But in actuality, there's all these lights that are getting brighter by people doing really meaningful work because they are being, like you said, and that's a really terrifying, but just such a fulfilling thing.
Yeah. One of the things I really have seen is that, so if most of the women and men that come to me are like, I'm stuck, I've kind of hit this place, I have all this stuff in this whole life, but I'm not fulfilled. What you just said is really pertinent because the other end of that is they're stuck because they're afraid to be overwhelmed. The deepest fear is that I will become so big and so vibrant and so seen and too much and that somehow they're going to explode or die or like, and that's like this unconscious, subconscious thing that holds them back. So what they do is they get stuck because stuck prevents them from some sort of implosion of overwhelm. So then they just stay stuck until they realize, oh, wait, and that's the tools I share with them is like, wait, if you have tools, you can move into this space and not get overwhelmed, but you're no longer stuck and you're actually creating change in people's lives and your life. So it's like a big light bulb went off for me when I started seeing that. I'm like, oh, the deepest fear is overwhelm. Like my fear was getting so big, I was going to dissipate into the ether and just go away. That is so not logical, right? But it was so reality for me. So I just stay smaller.
Yeah,
like absolutely. I would just be like, well, I'll just have a few private clients and I'll just make a dent right here. And now that's completely gone. I have no more fear of that. It's so fascinating.
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So talk more when you say overwhelm, what do you mean by that? Expand on that. Cause I love the energy of that idea.
Yeah. So these are just different states of being. So overwhelm is not a literal thing, right? It's like we get into the state of being where we just can't manage all the incoming energy. Like there's so much stuff coming at us that we can't manage all of that stuff coming in. If we just look at it as energy, like everything coming at us is energy, we get to a place where we don't have the capacity to take more in. And then our mind gets crazy. We're like, I can't manage all of that. And then we kind of sabotage ourselves because we think we can't manage it. So we do stupid shit.
Right,
and
absolutely.
or we say things that create distance between others. We do things that don't allow us to grow and impact more people. So on the physical world, we start doing things with our state of being, which is overwhelm. So it's basically we can't metabolize all this incoming greatness, and watching ourselves create more energy and make more impact gets scary. We don't think we can, again, metabolize that incoming and outgoing energy. And so the practice is simply having tools to understand how do I increase my capacity? How do I soften around this and allow more of that to come and go? And that's exactly what happened for me when I realized that. I was like, I was so afraid of being in a state of overwhelm, of disappointing people, of failing, of screwing up, of whatever it was. And it was just a story I had created around it. But through these like subtle tools that I've practiced for many years now, I'm like, all of a sudden one day I realized I'm not afraid of being overwhelmed anymore. I can manage the 100 people in our group program and my private clients and be present for them. Like, I have that capacity. And a couple years ago, I literally was like, I can't handle that. I can't handle that. No way. Like that and my private life and, having the life I love, like I didn't think that was possible. But understanding states of being was like the thing that really changed me. I was like, oh, this is all just energy. Like these are configurations of my body. Let me go within, like you said, the soft landing. Let me go within and soften and pay attention. And then I was able to, with some of the tools I have, change.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, look at that. I actually can do that.
So I love, so thinking of that, and I can hear how people would hear that as you just keep doing more. And that's not what you're talking about at all, right?
No,
that's the exact opposite of that. Right. It's really, like you said, tuning in and being your own soft landing, to be more present, to not be caught up in all the overwhelm, the fear of disappointment, the fear of failing, the fear of criticism, all those sorts of things, right? And so turning inwards with it. And so it isn't doing more and burning out. It is what? Like, how would you kind of translate that?
Well, the number one thing I've noticed is with all these amazing, powerful people is how mean they are to themselves, right? So I know this sounds really basic, but the number one thing I would say is kindness to self. Forget everyone else, just be kind to yourself. And if that's the number one, like that was the primary thing amongst my breathing and movement tools, it was like, how can I be kinder to myself? And the kinder I got to myself, the softer I was in my body. So tension arises in our body. So the physical body is connected to mental body. Tension rises when I'm being mean. When I'm like, you suck, you can't do that, you can't handle that. Yeah, go. You should be able to do that. Try harder, like all that.
Push through.
Like just keep doing it. It's like a coach from high school. Keep going. And then that voice creates tension in my body, which is dis-ease, not ease. So the core practice for me was, wait a minute, I know on a logical level this stuff's not true. Let me soften my body, literally soften my body. So practices that would soften my muscles and my face and my internal body, and then be kind. And the kinder I was to myself, I stopped worrying about everyone else. And can I handle that? And can I do that? It was like, wait, and the kinder I was to myself, the better I was at engaging with the outside world. So it was like changing my inside world, and I had this cocoon inside of like, this kind, beautiful, warm place of like, you're kind of badass. Like, you're pretty good at this. You got this, right? And then when I walked outside, I was kinder to other people. I was more tolerant. I'm more available to others. And that means I have the capacity to do more, but it's not by forcing myself to do more. I just literally I have a bigger capacity.
Right. Well, because yes, it does. It does, because you're not fighting an internal battle anymore. Right?
Yeah.
If you think about it, that there is no matter how bountiful energy is, there is a limit to which it can, before it just bursts, right? That is that overwhelm, like you said. And so when there is a battle going on inside, all of the resources, all of the energy is wrapped up in fighting that balance or that battle of like, I'm getting bigger, I'm getting more noticed. Oh no, I'm going to be criticized. I'm going to fail. Everybody's going to, judge me and tell me, told you so. And so I'm going to do that to myself. Right. And have that internal battle. But like you said, really softening and turning to that place within to create that soft landing. It then opens up all this other energy to be able to then translate that in what you do on a day-to-day basis. Right.
Because our fear of being big and seen and amazing and changing things and all of that, right? That is not a very logical thing. It's definitely subconscious. But what we do is we get really big energetically, and then we're so uncomfortable with that we have to burn that potential off somehow to get back to our small, comfortable place. And the way we burn the energy, like you just said, was mental nonsense. We talk to ourselves, we beat ourselves up, we ponder and try and effort and blah, 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 blah. We have this internal story going on, and all it does is it burns off energy. And then it keeps us, the energy is potential. So it just keeps us comfortably small. So if you look at really like a lot of the particularly a lot of the women probably listening to this podcast, they're probably pretty awesome and they want to grow because they're listening, but then they have these limits of like what they feel comfortable with and then become too much. And as soon as they become too much, they can watch the voices kick in. They'll get uncomfortable and then the voices will kick in and it'll just drain off their potential till they get comfortably small again.
Right, absolutely. And having very real world experiences where that criticism does come and letting that be the determination of, I knew that was going to happen. Check, get smaller.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Rather than really recognizing that that's somebody else's story about us. That's not our story.
Right. Yeah. And that when you create that, like you call it the soft landing internally, like I just don't care anymore. And it's not because I don't care like what you think of me. Like I care I care about people, but I no longer care. I don't use what they're saying as a determinant of how safe I'm going to feel. Like, and that's talk about freedom, talk about being able to make your own rules. Like that is free. When someone says something about you and you can just pause and be like, that's interesting. Like without being like, oh my God, they're right. Like, what if they're right? Oh God. And then we just like beat ourselves up.
Right, absolutely. Or letting one critical voice be the factor that determines all of who we are and, letting go of ignoring all the other things that we actually are in the world.
Totally.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's amazing how and it can happen so quickly and so subconsciously, like you said, that people don't even have awareness that is actually ruling their lives.
Completely. It's just like we are made up of habits. Like my partner, when he told me this, I thought it surprised me, but he's like, our personalities are just made up, they're a set of habits. He's like, we don't have a personality that we're deemed to have forever. He's like, your personality is a set of habits. If you change your habits, you change your personality. And I was like, at first I thought, no, what are you talking about? And now I'm like, God, it's so obvious as we change who we're being, our states of being, our habits. And then all of a sudden our personality changes and people go, oh, you're different, oh, you're easier to be around, or you're just softer, or whatever it is, or you're way more powerful. And then you become that,
Well, and the ways that we make it more difficult than it needs to be. Like I love what he said about that. You change your personality by changing your habits, right? That you can become whoever you want and need to be in the world just by changing what you do. Right? Yeah. Like it's that simple. And yet we overcomplicate it, but it almost is overcomplicating it in order to avoid doing it. Like it's a good distraction technique. Oh, that's too big. That's it couldn't possibly be that easy versus you just start doing things a little bit differently. And over time, it's a profound change.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it does. It feels overwhelming, right? Like, well, if I was going to be the person that, whatever it was, made $20 million a year or had the greatest love life ever or had everything going really well, for someone who doesn't feel that way, that feels massively overwhelming. Like they have to be a totally different person. So sometimes, like even with my clients, I've said one of the greatest shifts for me was just having a morning practice that I committed to regardless of what my crazy mind was saying. I would sit my butt down and I would breathe. And it was huge. But I watched like some of my clients, it's like, look, just 5 minutes in the morning, just start. Lay in bed for 5 minutes. And because their mind is so strong, so resistant to that potential of being that amazing person, their mind will come up with every reason not to. Even though it's just their mind talking. There's no reality there. It's just what their mind is telling them becomes the reality. So it's like changing little habits slowly will add up and then you become that person.
Yeah.
It doesn't require a massive leap like today.
Right. Well, and that's how we self-select out because if it is that big and it requires in order to get from, A to Z, there's all those steps in between, but I just see it as step A to B and there's no possible way I can do it in one step. So therefore I'm going to self-select out and not even allow myself to be bigger and recognize the influence that I have in this world.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I love that you use the word influence because many people have chosen the word influence to be like this bad thing because we think of influence as manipulation, but
oh, interesting.
Yeah, but the word influence is really like when you're being, like I wrote to you, I'm like, my favorite topic right now is above all else, who you're being determines your results. It's the great experiment of like, who am I being right now? Let me just look outside myself and see my results. I can alter who I'm being and change my results. And that part of like, when we're being powerful, when we're fully empowered, we influence people by being quiet. We just do. We influence our environment by who we're being all the time with our energy and our state of being. We don't have to say a lot. And that's the interesting thing is I think most people don't realize, like you said, how much influence they have. We are always influenced.
Oh,
influencing.
absolutely.
Doesn't matter what we're doing. We are.
Right. And we don't live in vacuums. You know, I still remember the person that reminded me of that when I said, you know, it's like, well, I've got, you know, I feel things, like I feel lots of feelings, and that's just who I am. And they're like, that's awesome. Like, that's amazing that you feel lots of feelings. And P.S., you don't live in a vacuum. So there's a responsibility that you need to be aware of, that creates influence over other people. And it was like, oh, okay, so I can hold both sides of that, right? Like I can have this experience of being a feeler, you know, and also recognize that it does influence other people. And so then do you use that power for good or evil, right? Do you use that ability to really create a fullness and a connection around you? Or do you use it, like you said, in that negative way where people kind of get freaked out about it and go, oh my gosh, now I'm being manipulative.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I love that.
So talk a little bit about this idea of being, right? Of that above all else, who we are being determines our results. So share about that, because I just love, I want to hear more about it.
Yeah, so I'd been experimenting with that because when I was in consulting and I would go in organizations, I would tell leaders, like I guess I was a little ahead of myself because I didn't really know what I was saying at the time. I would say, I'm like, look, how you're being is what I used to say. How you're being is more important than what you're saying right now. Like people, your employees are reading you constantly. They watch your body language when you come in the morning. They're reacting and responding to how you're being. And then what I realized, like as it's evolved over time, last year when I went to Bali, I went with a client and I meditated every morning. And I was like, she didn't have an intention for being there. So I wanted to be really available. And so I was meditating every morning and the same message came up every single morning. It was who you're being above all else determines your results. So I've really been examining that. So this year I played with that. And that was me experimenting with that same thing. Like when I have truly empowered states or when I'm not distracted, all of my energy is in me and I'm undiluted. I walk into a room, I'm not worried about what people think of me, and I just act however feels right. The little voice inside me is running the show. It's not like the crazy mental voice. So when I would play with that, I'd be like, what if I soften my body? What if I come into the room in a relaxed state? Well, then how do people respond? What if I move my body language and I say certain things? How will they respond? So I really started playing with like when I'm being, and it's a state I'm in, like I started playing with that and then I backed up and like, what if I don't do anything? What if I stop talking and then I show up and see what happens? And it was fascinating because this year I got more clients that were the right clients because I stopped talking so much. I just was like, this is interesting. I'm just going to be this person all the time and stop worrying what they're thinking of me. So that means in my body, if I keep doing my internal work, my personal journey, then I will show up as this different type of being. So it was just like this big experiment. And the results are directly correlated. So if I'm getting results where people are not responding well to me, then I get to check my state of being. I'm like, well, what energy am I putting off? Like desperate. This is one of the things in sales and marketing, right? People feel desperate because we feel panicked. And we might be saying, quote unquote, the right thing. But the energy that I'm putting off, they can feel it. They can feel you pulling on them. Like, I really need the sale, you know? People are just energetic beings. So if we can really be aware of like, what am I feeling in my body at the moment I'm speaking, then we're doing an experiment on how people are responding to us and what results I'm getting in the world. And that's really, for me, the most fun because I didn't have to expend so much energy strategizing, thinking, planning, talking things through. It becomes, let me just be quiet a little bit more and change my body language. And just as an example, I had a client who came to me. This is an example probably your audience can understand. She had a son and he's like 15. She's like, we don't talk a lot. And I'm always talking to him, trying to get him to talk to me, like to be a good mom. And like, how you doing? How's school? You know, she would talk. And he would not talk back to her. And I challenged her. I said, what if for the next week, before our next call, you stop talking to him? And every time you stand around him, just get really grounded in your body, like Mother Earth, like you're like maternal energy. And she came back the next week and started crying. And she was like, he talked to me more in 1 week than he had in 10 years. And she didn't say anything different. She stopped talking and she just focused on her body, that it was no longer anxiety and pulling at him. It was just being fully present with him. And I was like, now take that to everything you do, you know, and that was the practice. Be that way in every situation and see who and how people react to you and respond to you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so powerful. It's so powerful.
Yeah, I was crying on that one. That was a good one.
How could you not? I mean, I totally had chills everywhere as you were telling that story. Yeah. It's so amazing. What a gift. What a gift that she has been given to be able to stay in that energy and create confidence in that energy.
Yeah, because we live in a society that tells us you have to know more. You have to think more. You have to know more. You have to have more knowledge, another degree. You have to have a title. You have to have a certain car, a house, a look, a whatever. There's always something outside of us we need. I think the great secret is that it's actually inside of us is where, I mean, all the great teachers have always written about that, right? It's inside of us.
Right. And that's absolutely terrifying. Right?
Yeah.
Because if there's not something else I need to read or some other course I need to take or letters after my name, if there isn't something else, then that frantic motion, I'm responsible for actually turning inward and stopping that frantic outward and looking within. And oh my gosh, like, what if it's not there? Well, it is there, but that's the fear, right? What if it's not there? What if I'm the one person that doesn't know enough, right? It's like all those,
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, like all those things come up. I have a friend who I just absolutely adore. She's just amazing. And she's absolutely addicted to buying courses. She is addicted to buying courses. And we're kind of like her little like support group of like, no, gotta check with us first, and she's gotten a lot better in the last year or so, but she's an amazing businesswoman, and she just amazing on all levels, mom, friend, she just is amazing. And it is this like, encouraging her of like, you already know this stuff. Like it's more of trusting that you know it and following that energy than this outward, I need to get more in order to be, ready to do X or get more credible to do Y or whatever the case may be.
Yes. I really had an experience of that. I did a silent retreat, so a week-long silent retreat. And the first night I went there, like I did not want to do that. Like who wants to do that? It's scary as hell,
I got a little panic when you said it, but okay.
Yeah, I know. So I finally did it. This was like in 2009. I went the first night. It was only like 2 hours into the retreat. I had to jump up, so we've been silent for 2 hours. Jump up and run to the bathroom because like I threw up and had diarrhea because my whole system was so like the ultimate highest level of fear. And I was so afraid what was about to happen. And it was so weird. I'm like, well, you're just going to sit and be quiet. But I did. After that silent retreat, I made major life changes. Like I left my relationship, which was of course what I knew needed to happen, but I was afraid. So when we go inside, we know. But you're right. It's this major, major hurdle to go in and listen to ourselves. But we know, Yeah, we already know.
And we can't unknow once we know.
I know.
Right? Like it's like the difference between like knowing and knowing, right? It's like, oh, now I know. I can't go back to that blissfully unaware place. I always talk about it in my psychotherapy practice as my hot dog analogy, which actually I don't know if I share with listeners. So I'll share my hot dog analogy real quick in terms of awareness is that like, you can have a hot dog and it tastes great and you're like, fantastic. It's a 4th of July barbecue. I'm enjoying the hot dog, right? And then the first time you accidentally read the back of the package to what's in a hot dog, you're like, oh shit, I just ate what? And so you now know what's in a hot dog. And so you can eat them again. Like you can go to the ballpark and you can have one, but you never enjoy it the quite same way because you know kind of what you're choosing, you kind of know what you're having there. And awareness is that exact same way is that, once you know, you can't ever unknow. And so you can kind of like delude yourself into keeping the same old choices or the same old behaviors, but deep down, and that starts to create like cosmic energy unrest of like, how do you know this and do this? And so the more that comes into that place of awareness, it's like, oh, I can't know and still do this. And so therefore that change starts to happen. And that can be scary, especially when it comes to our relationships, our families, our professions of like, if I start to really know that something's not lined up, what responsibility do I have to then take in terms of changing it? Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's so important, like having someone like you or someone like me or somebody who's with you, next to you, because, that's a huge portion of it is like, I always joke, I'm like, I'm just here to help you remember. You're like, I love that. I'm not there to like tell you how to be. It's like, no, I'm here to help you remember. And when you remember, I'm here to tell you I'm on that journey too.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So when it gets scary, I'm here. And I think that's a big part of it. And when I just help people see what they can't see because they start deluding themselves again. And I've done this, right? It's like we get the door opens, you start reading the ingredients on the hot dog, and then you're like, no!
Could possibly.
Yeah, I got to put that down. I'm not going to read all the ingredients. And so we just we get a glimpse, and then we fall right back to old habits because we're so scared of just moving forward. But that's the thing. It's like, for me, I realize we spend so much energy staying where we are. But once we get over that initial hump, like the place where I am in my life is exponentially more at ease, joyful. Like it doesn't matter. The outside stuff still occurs. I'm not on a roller coaster, up and down, up and down, up and down. Like, I'm just like, you know what? Life is pretty fluid and I've got this. Like, I'm moving forward. And so that's really the place. I think we have this illusion that it's going to kill us to go over the hump of that awareness and do it, because like throwing up and having diarrhea.
Right, absolutely.
More so because I was like stuck in this place in Indonesia. It's totally quiet and I had nowhere to go. But really, it's like being on that journey with someone so that they know I'm going to survive. And on the other side, this is what's possible. Is like, it is possible. You have it within you to survive this and then be a big badass person that helps others, like that changes others' lives. And sometimes it's uncomfortable, but I really don't know many people that can't do it. It's right. Like, it's just, we have the fear of doing it and just got to move through that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also bringing into the awareness and really feeling actually how uncomfortable it is to be in the stuck place. But if that has become such the norm that there isn't even an awareness that this is actually killing me by being in the stuckness, I'm just so used to it. It feels pretty normal at this point.
Right. And that's something I've had to learn in my years of working with people, is that most people, like the majority of humans, are not going to change. They're going to go through this lifetime just kind of going along. And my job isn't to pull them over and be like, see, this is what's possible. You got to come, because that just wastes my energy. So really, I noticed that there's a very small percentage of humans that they've got their head above, the water, and they're like, wait, what else is there? And those are the people that I'm looking for, that are like, I'm scared and I want to go on the ride because I can't do this anymore. And so it's just like, yeah, we plant seeds for people and we might kind of awaken some people to what else is possible. Like, how bad it is to be stuck? But really, it's the ones that are like, I'm willing to pay you to come work with you, Anna. I'm willing to pay you to come work with you, Kelly, because I need someone to go on the journey with me because I'm going. And it's like, yeah, and that's how I've always been. So therefore, that's why I love helping. Because I'm like, it doesn't mean it's easy, but once there's that, like, I can't do it the other way anymore.
Right. Because
then all possibilities there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because the step right before that is the too good to change it, too bad to remain here, right? And people can stay in that spot for a long time before they shift over of going, I can't be in a semi-okay place anymore. It's actually killing me.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like the fear of change is greater than the desire for change. And what's the other thing is being really gentle with people and kind to people at that place, because they're probably beating themselves up that they want to change, but they just really don't want to change.
Yes.
And that's like the time when we can really beat ourselves up. And, there's times like that for me too. And now I'm just like, you know what? You're really quite comfortable in this little dysfunction you have. So just be kind to yourself. And when it's time, it's going to be time. And then you'll be ready.
For sure. Because it is a universal place. We have all and will continue all to be there.
Right. Yeah. And we're all just growing it we just take little leaps here and there. And then sometimes they gain momentum and we take a bunch of leaps and then we get to the next level. And we're like, oh, there's something else I'm going to pay attention to. If not, we'd be enlightened and we'd just poof away and we'd be done.
Right, absolutely. Then there's that too, right?
Right. Exactly.
Absolutely. So any retreats coming up for you?
I actually don't have I still do private retreats.
Okay. So private ones right now.
I do one-on-one. So anyone wants to schedule with me, I go and meet them. Actually I'm in Ojai, California right now. Oh yeah, not very far from you.
Not far.
And I just found a new retreat center. So now I'm going to put it out there, just awesome. New place to come. But otherwise they're private retreats.
Okay. So, awesome. Yeah. Awesome. So thinking about kind of this topic that we're talking about, this soft landing, and really being able to have it be something that is within us, not a question of, is it within us, but it is within us. Any ways that you can offer or, kind of just encourage as folks are being able to really identify that maybe it really is within me, and how to kind of, start starting those conversations and reaching out for support in terms of really doing exactly what we're talking about, is moving out of the discomfort or moving out of the comfort of where they're at, of that stuckness, and into the discomfort of change to really create amazing bigness in their lives.
Well, one of the things that just popped in to my mind right now is that place of, well, first of all, one of the challenges we have is that people come to me, and I'm assuming possibly coming to you, we're very mental. So we're high intelligence, we're mental, da, da, da. But so one of the big shifts was bringing more movement into my practice. So one of the things that I would suggest that anyone can do in your audience is really starting to become aware of inside what sensations are happening. So one of the basic tools I give my new clients is start practicing softening your body. Like literally, I will walk down, through my scalp to my mouth, my jaw, my throat, my heart center, my stomach. Pelvic floor is huge, especially for women. Softening, pelvic floor, butt cheek muscles, all that. Legs, feet. If you do that multiple times a day, all of a sudden you're like, oh, look at that. My stomach's really tight. Again, let me soften it. And so it's like relaxing is softening. It's just like softening it so that your body is not holding tension. Tension is limitation. Soften is possibility. So really bringing it from instead of analyzing ourselves all the time, it's like take the information, right, that work with you or me or you're listening to this conversation, take the information and then just let it filter into your body. You don't have to do anything with this mentally. It's in there. Now practice softening your body. If you literally walk around softening your body, it's one of the first steps towards recognizing that place within us. It's like the safety zone. It is in there. But when it's tight, when we're all tense, it's not there. It's like we literally bounce things off of us. We are just creating more anxiety and more stress. So softening the body is probably the most profound. And it sounds so simple. Like that can't really work, but guaranteed it works.
It does.
It's like, yeah, it's huge. So
yeah. Well, and I think that that's part of the simplicity of it is that it's totally within everyone's wheelhouse to practice, right? And the simplicity also is that the downside of it is that we want to disregard it as it's too simple.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's true. Yeah. Right. Our minds want to have some sort of complex system to follow and be like,
oh yeah.
Oh, but it's so complex. I've got to do all this stuff with my mind to figure it out. But really it's, starting within the body is really, really important. And it's a huge part of what I do. On the private retreats, we don't just talk about stuff and process and draw things out. We literally hike and talk because I will look at their body and tell them what about softening this? What about moving your hips? What about blah, blah, blah? And that's where the most profound experiences have occurred. That's why I started doing the private retreats more. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Just watching people's body and helping them shift it helps them have a realization and feel things that they weren't feeling. So it's pretty interesting.
Oh, that's so fantastic.
Connecting the mind and the body.
Yes, I know. I always say that psychology did such a disservice, all those years trying to convince us that it was separate. It's like, what the hell was everybody thinking? It's only the last 30 years we finally realized they're connected. Mm-hmm. I'm like, how was that ever a debate? I'm so confused by that. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome.
No.
Well, I am just so excited that we've had this conversation today, but can you share a little bit about how people can find you and follow your work?
Sure. On my website at kellysheets.com, or the new project I'm super excited about so that's pretty high level work. And then with Jeff, my partner, we created thechangemilitia.com. And the Change Militia is it's foundational tools. It's really inexpensive. And so it's an option to try some of these physical things at your own pace. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm excited. It's different for me to do this. It's exciting. So both of those places, or, if you're interested in having a conversation, then you can email me at kellysheets.com and I'll be the one that gets it. So
fantastic. Well, I'll be sure and include all of those in the show notes too, so folks can get it and be able to connect with you and things like that. As we kind of wrap up, any last things that you want to kind of offer the audience? I'm so energized by our conversation, but any last things that you'd like to add or kind of share with the group?
Oh, I don't know. Probably the thing that I would tell, I just told a client the other day, I'm like, could you just walk away from this conversation and know that you're way more awesome and amazing and powerful than your little mind is telling you right now. So just remember that. It's that is the key thing. It's so many people that are attracted to me have these big visions, and it's just their mind is keeping them limited. So there's all this potential, and you're just one step away from creating that sense of ease and fulfillment and amazing life. It's not that far away. So it's just that, remembering that you are capable of that. That would be the thing. It's we all have that capability if you want it.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that piece of encouragement. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for taking the time and coming on the podcast today. What an exciting conversation.
I love it. Thank you very much for having me.
That was such a fun interview with Kelly. Obviously, her energy is just amazing, and she's such a wealth of knowledge. And I'm just so excited to have featured her this month when we are talking about, creating a soft, safe landing, because her spin on it being something that is actually within us is just this beautiful, just illustration to how dynamic this topic is. She has such a wealth of expertise, and her personal journey of being able to practice these things that she talks about within the podcast interview is fantastic, right? Because I think oftentimes when we have people that are working with others, we doubt of what they've done on their own. And that's actually the complete opposite, is that I would say for most of the people that I know that work in a helping, healing profession, they've gone through their own process of being able to practice what they preach. And I just love how Kelly really brings up so many great examples of being able to create this softness within and really use that softening as a way to be in the world. And that actually allows us to create the results that we want in our lives by being that versus just talking about it. So I'm so excited that she was able to come on and share about that. I know another thing that stood out for me in our conversation was just this idea of overwhelm and how we are so scared to be bigger and, achieve more and say more and be more seen because of this fear of overwhelm and all the energy that comes to stop us. And I love Kelly's way that she describes overwhelm, all the fears that are associated with it, and really just coming at it from just this energy mindset. I just thought it was a really cool illustration of it. So I'm definitely going to walk away with that piece of it, of being able to look at how we get stuck because of our fear of being overwhelmed. And actually on the other side of that is peace, is ease, right? It isn't overwhelm. It's actually peace. And that was just, such a good takeaway. So obviously enjoyed my time with Kelly, and I know you guys did too. I will definitely link all of her just cool projects she's working on, and obviously how to get in touch with her in the show notes. So you guys are welcome to check that out. Also, I want to encourage you guys, we are still doing registration. We have a few spots left for our Shine Retreat for Women at the end of September. And I would love for each and every one of you to be there. I think it would be an amazing way for us to come together and really practice this idea of creating a soft landing within ourselves, because it is so part of the focus of the retreat and has been something that Mari and I have been so intentional about really creating the space for that, because it just allows us to be so powerful and have great influence and just be bigger and be comfortable in that big rather than fearful of it. So anyways, you are welcome to connect with Kelly. Obviously, please do reach out to myself to Anna at Her Life Unscripted, and please do come to the Shine Retreat for Women. We would love to see you there. It's going to be an amazing event, and we still do have a few spots left, so there's room if you are still interested and pondering. And yeah, I'm just excited to have spent time with all of you today and just let me into your world and your lives. It's an absolute privilege and honor, and I'm just proud to know every single one of you. So I look forward to talking to you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Want to learn about the latest retreats, workshops, and speaking events hosted by Anna? Head over to herlifeunscripted.com to get in on all the juicy details. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast so we can continue to grow our amazing audience. Lastly, be sure and send in your voice feedback via the SpeakPipe app or to Anna at herlifeunscripted.com. We can't wait to hear from you.